We've all been there, haven't we? That familiar 3 o'clock slump. You just hit a wall, feel completely drained.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, when you really stop and think about it, I mean, most of us aren't exactly, toiling in fields or hunting mammoths these days.
Not at all.
We're physically doing way less than our ancestors, but somehow we feel perpetually tired.
Yeah,
And the usual fixes, right? Like another coffee, maybe an energy drink.
the quick fixes.
Yeah, they just leave you feeling jittery, maybe heart racing a bit, anxious even, and then you just crash even harder later.
Absolutely, it's a cycle.
So what if the answer isn't just, getting 9 hours of sleep or having the perfect kale smoothie?
Right.
What if the real problem is actually deeper? Something going on inside our heads, in our brains, and maybe, just maybe, it's something surprisingly actionable that you haven't really thought about before.
It's so true. The usual advice about fatigue often kind of misses the mark, doesn't it?
Yeah.
We focus so much on the external stuff, sleep, diet, exercise, which are important, don't get me wrong.
Force.
But often the deepest energy drains, the ones really characteristic of modern life, they're internal. They're subtle.
Okay.
So our mission with this deep dive really is to pull back the curtain on those surprising, maybe overlooked reasons you feel so tired.
And then give us some answers?
And then, crucially, yes, equip you with some practical, research-backed ways to get your energy back, often without having to totally blow up your life,
That sounds good. Okay, so let's tackle this paradox then. Why are we living now with all this convenience, less physical work? Why do we feel more exhausted mentally and physically than someone, say, back in the Paleolithic era? It just feels backwards.
It does feel backwards. It's a great question. And I think when you zoom out, the core idea is what some researchers call an evolutionary mismatch.
Evolutionary mismatch. Okay.
Basically, our bodies, and critically our brains, evolved over hundreds of thousands of years for a world that's just vastly different from the one we live in now.
Right. Concrete jungles versus actual jungles.
Pretty much. Think about this analogy. Let's call him Carlos. Carlos wakes up in a box, his apartment, travels to work in another box, maybe his car or the train,
Yep, familiar.
then sits for like 8 hours in another box, his cubicle, often doing work that needs intense focus, but almost zero physical variety.
Okay.
And then maybe later, to unwind, he consumes stuff, alcohol, junk food, endless scrolling that actually disrupts his natural systems even more.
And Carlos is basically most of us, isn't he?
He's a blueprint for millions, yeah, our ancestors. They were moving, constantly getting very natural light, different sounds, textures, the physical push of just surviving.
Right, a much richer sensory environment.
Exactly. Carlos, on the other hand, is kind of confined physically, yes, but also sensorily.
That's a really powerful way to put it. It's like we're running this incredibly complex, ancient biological machine on totally the wrong software or fuel.
That's a great way to think about it. Our design specs, if you like, were for free movement, waking naturally, being active most of the day.
And when you ignore the manual for any machine,
It breaks down, right? Or malfunctions. We see it physically, like arthrosis from not moving enough, or diabetes from too much processed sugar. Our bodies protest this mismatch.
but you're saying it's not just the body, it's the brain too.
Oh, absolutely. It goes deep into our neural architecture. Our brains are amazing, super adaptable. They just haven't had time to catch up biologically to the speed of change.
Technology moves faster than evolution.
Exponentially faster. And here's the really interesting part, maybe a bit counterintuitive. Not trying to keep pace with every single new app or notification, not constantly adapting to this hyperspeed that can actually be good for your energy.
So like resisting the urge to keep up is actually beneficial.
In many ways, yes.
Yeah.
You see the strain, right? Rising anxiety, depression, even in younger folks who supposedly grew up with this tech. Their brains are being fundamentally shaped and often drained by it.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So it's not just about willpower with tech, it's about this constant background hum of stimulation draining our resources. Which brings us to something you mentioned earlier this night, diving insight. How does diving in the dark connect to feeling tired at your desk?
Ah, yes, the night dive thing.
Yeah,
It perfectly illustrates the core idea. An experienced diver once explained to me, when you're diving at night, your brain actually uses significantly less oxygen per minute compared to a day dive.
Really? Why?
Simple. Fewer stimuli. Think about it in the darkness. There's just less to see, less to process. And every single thing we perceive, see, hear, touch, even every decision we make that's a stimulus.
And processing stimuli costs energy.
It costs energy. It requires oxygen. Neurons firing takes fuel. So less input, less processing, less energy burned by the brain.
Wow. So it's not just running a marathon that's tiring. It's
Yeah.
it's the mental marathon of just processing modern life.
Yeah.
The sheer volume of information, the choices.
Yeah.
That's draining us quietly.
That's exactly it. Every sound, every notification pop-up, every choice about what email to answer first,
Hmm.
it requires neurons to activate. And many of these connections in the brain use something called glutamate. It's the brain's main go signal, the primary excitatory neurotransmitter.
Like the gas pedal for the brain.
Good analogy, yeah. More stimuli, more mental revving means more glutamate being used.
Okay.
And it's not just external stuff. Even controlling your own impulses, like, say, resisting the urge to grab that donut or scroll through social media again, that requires your prefrontal cortex to kick in.
The brain's CEO, sort of.
Right, your executive control center. And guess what? It uses a lot of glutamate to override those automatic urges.
So just deciding not to do something, that impulse control, that actually costs us energy too.
Absolutely. And then you layer on the sheer scale of modern decision-making.
Mm.
Get this. The average person today makes somewhere around 30,000 decisions a day.
30,000? That seems impossible. What counts as a decision?
Well, everything from what socks should I wear to should I change careers, obviously, but also micro decisions like click this link or ignore that notification.
Hmm.
It all adds up. Compare that to our ancestors. Their choices were much more limited, more routine.
Okay, 30,000. That's staggering. And each one uses neurotransmitters.
Each one uses resources, yeah.
Right.
And here's where it gets crucial, that glutamate, after it's used, doesn't just disappear cleanly. Its byproducts, its metabolites,
Yeah.
they sort of build up inside the neurons.
Like metabolic garbage.
Exactly like garbage.
I
This
mean-
isn't just passive waste. It actively kind of clogs things up. It makes it harder, more energetically expensive for your brain to fire up for the next decision, especially as the day wears on.
Ah, so that's the mental fatigue, that feeling late in the day where your brain just feels slow, fuzzy, and maybe why your discipline just evaporates.
That's the sequence, precisely. More decisions, more stimuli, more glutamate used, more
Yeah.
garbage accumulation, more effort needed for tasks, fatigue. It's a downward spiral.
And that fatigue then leads to worse decisions, right? Like reaching for junk food at night.
Absolutely. Your willpower, which is essentially your decision-making capacity, gets depleted. Think about it. What you might eat at 6 a.m. after pulling an all-nighter, something you'd never touch normally.
Yeah, definitely not my best choices then.
Right. Your brain is fatigued, impulse control is low, and science can actually observe this stuff.
Yeah.
They use techniques like fMRI with spectroscopy to literally track the buildup of these glutamate metabolites.
Wow.
Or they measure things like how much your pupils dilate, which is a sign of mental effort. It shows, for instance, it takes measurably more brain power, more energy to tell a lie than to tell the truth.
That's fascinating. So, okay, if glutamate buildup and decision fatigue are the core issues, where does caffeine fit in? Because that's everyone's go-to solution, right?
It is. Caffeine is the world's favorite stimulant, no question. But the crucial thing to understand is that it masks fatigue. It doesn't solve it. It doesn't give you real energy.
It just hides the problem.
It creates an energy debt. Here's how. As your brain works and burns energy throughout the day, a molecule called adenosine naturally builds up.
Adenosine, okay.
Adenosine is basically your brain's sleepiness signal. It accumulates, binds to receptors, and tells your body, hey, you're getting tired, time to wind down for sleep. It creates sleep pressure.
And caffeine messes with that signal.
Exactly. Caffeine molecules look similar enough to adenosine that they can sneak in and block those adenosine receptors in your brain.
Like putting tape over the warning light.
Perfect analogy.
Right.
It stops the tired message from getting through, so you feel more alert, less tired. But the adenosine is still building up in the background.
Ah, so you're just ignoring the signals.
You're ignoring them,
Yeah.
and you're essentially borrowing energy from later. You're creating a debt that will come due.
And that's the crash.
That's the crash. For most people, caffeine's effects last around, say, 6 hours. When it wears off, those receptors are suddenly open again, and all that accumulated adenosine floods in at once.
Bam! Hits you like a ton of bricks.
Exactly, that dramatic slump. And interestingly, chronically high adenosine levels are linked to feeling low, depressed, even conditions like neurasthenia, which is basically chronic mental fatigue. And some researchers even theorize links to fibromyalgia.
Wow. So going back to the car analogy, the glutamate buildup is like driving with the handbrake slightly on, making everything harder.
Right, draining your fuel faster.
And caffeine is like ignoring the fuel gauge and the engine warning lights, just pushing it until you completely run out of gas.
That sums it up perfectly. It's
Okay.
a temporary fix that can actually worsen the underlying issue in the long run.
Okay. This is eliminating, but also maybe a bit depressing. The good news is you said there are actionable strategies.
Absolutely. Understanding the why is the first step. Now we can talk about the what to do.
All right, let's start with caffeine then. If it's creating this debt, how do we manage it better? You mentioned an experiment.
Yes, a simple self-experiment. Try this. Tomorrow or whenever, make a clear note of the exact time you have your first coffee or caffeinated drink. Then just pay attention through the day. Note the precise time you feel that familiar energy slump, that crash.
And look for a pattern.
Look for about a 6-hour gap. If your slump consistently hits roughly 6 hours after your caffeine, well, that's almost certainly your adenosine payback time. The caffeine's worn off, the debt is due.
That's really concrete. Okay, so once you see that pattern, what can you actually do?
Well, a few things. First, you could consider a brief caffeine holiday. Just stop for a few days.
Cold turkey. Might be tough.
Can be, yeah. But it helps reset your sensitivity. If quitting isn't the goal, maybe look into modern decaf options. The processes used now are much better, much safer than they used to be.
Right, Swiss water process and things like that.
Exactly. Or you could switch to something with less caffeine, but maybe some other benefits, like matcha green tea. It has L-theanine, which can smooth out the energy, fewer jitters, more antioxidants.
Okay, so lower dose, maybe a different delivery system. What about this caffeine nap idea?
Ah, yes, the caffeine. This is for emergencies only, really, not a daily habit.
Okay, disclaimer noted.
The idea is you consume a small amount of caffeine, maybe half a coffee or a tea, and then immediately lie down for a short power nap. Crucially, under 20 minutes.
Why under 20 minutes?
To avoid going into deep sleep cycles. During that short nap, your brain clears out some of the adenosine that's already built up. Then, as you're waking up, the caffeine starts to kick in because it takes about 20 minutes to your system.
So you get the benefit of the nap and the caffeine boost hitting at the same time? Clever.
It can be effective for a short-term boost, yeah,
Okay.
but again, not the long-term solution. The big goal with all these caffeine tactics is really about managing both adenosine and that glutamate accumulation we talked
All
about.
right, tackling both sides of the fatigue coin. So beyond caffeine, you mentioned balancing other neurotransmitters. Dopamine fasting came up. Sounds intense.
It sounds more intense than it often needs to be. But first, understand this. Your brain is designed to protect you. It uses neurotransmitters to make you feel tired and stop physical activity way before you hit your actual physical limit, often around 40% of true capacity.
Like a safety buffer.
Exactly. It's why getting sudden exciting news can give you a second wind, even if you felt wiped out moments before. That's dopamine, adrenaline kicking in.
Okay, so dopamine fasting. What is it, actually?
It's basically taking a deliberate break from highly stimulating activities that trigger big dopamine releases. Things like constant internet browsing, phone checking, social media, hyperpalatable junk food, maybe even loud, intense music or pornography.
So turning down the noise, basically. For how long?
It could be a full day, maybe like a tech-free Sunday, or even just a few dedicated hours. Think of it like a reset for your dopamine receptors.
Why do they need resetting?
Because constant overstimulation makes them less sensitive. You need bigger and bigger hits to feel rewarded. By taking a break, you allow them to regain sensitivity.
And more sensitive dopamine receptors means?
It means you get more satisfaction and motivation from normal, everyday activities. It makes making good long-term choices feel less effortful, less costly in terms of mental energy.
Ah, so it reduces the glutamate cost of good decisions.
Precisely. Less internal struggle means less glutamate burn. Plus, a healthier dopamine system supports better levels of adrenaline and noradrenaline, your natural energy and focus chemicals. It helps rebuild your baseline energy and willpower.
Okay, that makes sense. Resetting the reward system makes healthy choices easier. Now, what about simplifying the external world to reduce that stimuli overload you mentioned?
Hugely important for managing glutamate. Remember, every little decision, even mundane ones, drains that mental battery.
Like what to wear, what to eat.
Exactly. So automation is key. Think Steve Jobs or Mark Zuckerberg wearing basically the same simple outfit every day. It removes one daily decision point.
Saves brain power for bigger things.
Right. Or having a weekly meal plan, maybe 10, 20 go-to healthy recipes you rotate. No more agonizing daily over what's for dinner. It simplifies shopping too. Massive reduction in mental load.
It's like creating routines to free up mental bandwidth. Kind of like the second brain idea in productivity.
Exactly like that. Offloading predictable decisions. Even just scheduling specific times for specific tasks helps you stop worrying about when you'll do something, which is itself an energy drain.
Okay. And what about managing digital stimuli directly?
Be strategic. Avoid just constantly blasting your brain with, say, loud motivational music all day that's neurotransmitter overspending.
Mm.
And here's a really practical phone hack. Put your most addictive apps, or even your whole phone screen, into black and white mode.
Black and white, does that really help?
Massively. Color is highly stimulating. It grabs attention, triggers dopamine, take away the color, and those apps become instantly less appealing, less rewarding. It reduces the dopamine drain and also the sheer visual processing effort.
How do you do that?
Usually in your phone's accessibility settings, look for color filters or color correction. You can often set it to turn on with a shortcut or even automatically for certain apps or times. Try it. It's surprisingly effective.
I might actually try that one. Okay, and of course we have to talk sleep. The ultimate reset, right?
Absolutely fundamental. Non-negotiable, really. Quality sleep is when your brain does its housekeeping, clearing out that adenosine, those glutamate metabolites we talked about.
The brain garbage.
Exactly. Poor sleep means you start the day already behind, with more clutter in the system, and messing with your circadian rhythm, your internal body clock. That hits your energy hard.
What about the whole night owl versus lurk thing? Is that real?
Chronotypes are real. Yes, there are genetic differences, but the difference in natural sleep timing is usually smaller than people think. Many self-proclaimed night owls are actually just people with poor sleep hygiene, late-night screen time, inconsistent bedtimes.
So habits more than genetics for most people.
For many, yes.
Yeah.
And the impact of sleep debt is huge. Even just losing 2 hours of needed sleep can mess up your blood sugar control by like 40% the next day. Think what it does to your brain energy.
Point taken. And what about nutrients? You mentioned deficiencies acting like a handbrake.
They really can, because they directly impact energy production at the cellular level. If you're diagnosed deficient in something, fixing it can be a game changer.
Like which ones specifically for energy?
Vitamin D is a big one. So common to be low and strongly linked to fatigue. If you're deficient, supplementing with 2,000, 5,000 IU daily can make a world of difference.
Okay.
Then the B vitamins, B1, B2, B3 especially, they're crucial cofactors for your mitochondria, your cellular power plants. Without them, the energy production line just doesn't run efficiently.
Like spark plugs for the cells.
Good way to put it.
Yeah.
And magnesium, too, involved in hundreds of processes, including energy metabolism. If you're low, correcting it can definitely boost energy. Addressing these is like removing major roadblocks.
Okay, so we've covered managing caffeine, dopamine, simplifying sleep, nutrients. What about actively boosting energy production, getting those mitochondria working better?
Right, so moving from removing brakes to maybe pressing the accelerator a bit, but smartly. Direct ATP supplements exist, maybe 400 milligrams a day, shows some sports benefit. But we use so much ATP daily, you can't really supplement your way there.
So it's more about efficiency.
Exactly. Making your existing mitochondria work better. For instance, the amino acid arginine can help your body create energy using less oxygen. So more bang for your buck, resource-wise.
Interesting.
And near-infrared light is fascinating. Specific wavelengths of red and near-infrared light applied to the skin seem to temporarily boost mitochondrial activity and ATP production right in that area. People use panels or devices daily.
Like a localized energy boost for your cells.
Sort of, yeah. And then there are other compounds known to support mitochondrial health. Things like NAD precursors, omega-3 fats, resveratrol,
Yeah.
they all contribute to better cellular energy efficiency.
What about things like taurine or glutamine? I hear about those for brain energy.
They can be used by the brain for energy, yes,
Yeah.
but use them with caution because they can potentially increase glutamate levels or excitability in the brain. They might actually worsen that garbage accumulation or lead to anxiety or insomnia for some people. So targeted use, maybe, not just throwing them in the mix.
Good caveat. And for those times you just need a quick jolt physically. What about movement?
Even if you don't have time for a full workout, short bursts of intensity can work wonders. HIIT, high-intensity interval training.
Like burpees or sprints.
Doesn't have to be that intense. Even just 30 seconds of vigorous activity running in place, fast jumping jacks, whatever gets your heart rate up quickly.
What does that do?
It triggers a release of adrenaline and noradrenaline. Instant natural energy and focus boost. Great for breaking through an afternoon slump without resorting to caffeine.
Nice. Okay, last area. The mind-body connection. Stress, mindset. How does that fit into energy?
It's huge. Chronic stress is an absolute energy vampire. So practices like meditation, mindfulness, simple breathing exercises, they aren't just woo-woo, they actively conserve energy by reducing that stress load.
Adaptogens, too, like ashwagandha.
Adaptogens like ashwagandha, rhodiola, sometimes ginseng consciously with ginseng dosage can help your body cope with stress better, preventing that burnout cascade. And don't forget basic hydration.
Ah, yes, water.
Seriously.
Uh.
Even mild dehydration, like 1%, can knock your physical performance down by 10%. That definitely translates to feeling less energetic overall.
And mindset. Does being positive actually give you more energy?
The evidence suggests happy, optimistic people genuinely tend to report higher energy levels. It's probably complex, maybe less energy wasted on worry and anxiety, maybe better hormonal balance. But the link seems real.
Okay. Any sort of more out there biohacks for energy?
Well, there are things with less robust scientific backing yet, but people explore them. Grounding or earthing, the idea of direct skin contact with the earth.
Walking barefoot.
Yeah, or using grounding mats. Theoretically, it allows for electrical discharge, potentially improving energy balance. Then there's rebounding, jumping on a mini trampoline. Some say it boosts lymphatic flow and energy. Others say it's just a fun form of exercise. Less proven, but interesting ideas out there. Fascinating range of strategies. Okay, so pulling this all together then, this constant tiredness so many of us feel, it's often not just about sleep or diet, fundamentally.
Right.
It's often rooted in that evolutionary mismatch,
Yeah.
amplified by the hidden costs of modern life, the relentless stimuli, the decision overload, even the way we use things like caffeine.
But the really good news, the empowering part, is that there's a lot you can actually do about it by tackling those root causes.
Absolutely. The core levers are really managing that adenosine buildup and that glutamate accumulation and reducing the constant drain from overstimulation.
So the call to action for you listening is,
Pick one or two things from this conversation that resonated. Maybe it's the caffeine experiment. Maybe it's trying black and white mode on your phone. Maybe it's planning meals for a week.
start small, be consistent.
Exactly. Try it consistently for a bit and just honestly observe. Notice how you feel. Notice your energy levels, your focus, your mood. You have more control than you might think.
Leaves us with a final thought then. What if the biggest secret to having boundless energy isn't actually about doing more things, adding more supplements or hacks? What if it's really about learning how to consciously protect your brain, shield your energy systems from the constant unseen demands of this modern world we've built?